Narcissistic abuse, emotional manipulation, and covert narcissist behavior don't just hurt you, they destabilize your mind. If you were raised by a narcissistic parent, the problem isn't that you're confused, emotional, or too sensitive. The problem is that you were trained to doubt yourself long before you were old enough to understand what was happening. You didn't grow up learning who you are. You grew up learning how to survive someone else's ego. This video is about why narcissistic parents make you feel crazy, why your thoughts don't feel stable even years later, and why your reality always seemed negotiable to them, but never to you. By the end of this, the confusion you've carried for years will finally have a shape. And once something has a shape, it can no longer control you the same way. Narcissistic parents don't usually destroy their children with obvious abuse. If they screamed nonstop or were cruel all the time, you would have recognized the danger early. Instead, they operate in subtle psychological ways that slowly erode your trust in yourself. They don't confront your confidence head-on. They dismantle your perception first. They deny things you clearly remember. They rewrite conversations you were present for. They dismiss your emotions with calm certainty. And that calm certainty is what breaks your mind over time. When a parent confidently tells a child that their memory is wrong, the child doesn't question the parent. The child questions reality. That's how gaslighting works at the deepest level. Over time, you stop trusting your own recollection. You replay moments not to understand them, but to see if you're allowed to remember them. You analyze your tone, your wording, your reactions, wondering where you messed up. That's why narcissistic abuse creates anxiety, brain fog, and mental fatigue. Your brain never gets rest because certainty was never allowed. Another powerful way narcissistic parents make you feel crazy is emotional invalidation. Every emotion you express becomes a problem. Sadness is labeled weakness. Anger becomes disrespect. Joy becomes arrogance. Curiosity becomes defiance. You're not taught how to understand emotions. You're taught how to suppress them. Eventually, emotions stop feeling like internal signals and start feeling like liabilities. You don't ask yourself what you feel anymore. You ask whether it's safe to feel it. That's how people become disconnected from themselves while still appearing fine to the outside world. You function, but you don't feel grounded. Inconsistency is where the real damage accelerates. Narcissistic parents shift without warning. One day they're warm, supportive, almost loving. The next day they're cold, critical, or humiliating. There's no explanation and no accountability. Your nervous system stays permanently alert, trying to predict which version you'll encounter next. This creates trauma bonding. Your brain associates love with relief instead of safety. You cling to the good moments because they feel like oxygen after suffocation. You tolerate the bad moments because part of you believes love has to be earned. And because this dynamic comes from a parent, your mind doesn't label it abuse, it labels it family. Blame plays a central role in this system. Narcissistic parents rarely take responsibility. If you're hurt, it's because you're sensitive. If you're angry, it's because you're dramatic. If you pull away, it's because you're ungrateful. No matter what happens, accountability never reaches them. It always lands on you. So you grow up emotionally over-responsible. You apologize too much. You explain too much. You feel guilty for existing, resting, or saying no. You become hyper-aware of other people's moods, taking responsibility for emotions that were never yours to carry. Even when nothing is happening, you feel tense. That's not personality. That's conditioning. Another destabilizing tactic narcissistic parents use is identity distortion. They label you early and repeat those labels until they feel like facts. You're told you're difficult, selfish, dramatic, or the problem in the family, even when you're the most empathetic person in the room, especially when you are. Those labels don't disappear when you grow up. They become your inner voice. You criticize yourself automatically. You doubt your intentions. You fear becoming like them, even though your entire personality is built around not hurting people. That fear itself proves how different you are. What you absorbed wasn't truth, it was projection. Every narcissistic family system also runs on roles. Someone has to keep the peace. Someone has to absorb blame. Someone has to succeed perfectly. Someone has to disappear emotionally. Once you're assigned a role, stepping outside it feels dangerous. Growth feels wrong. Boundaries feel cruel. Independence feels like betrayal, not because it is, but because it disrupts control. That's why narcissistic parents react strongly when you change. Your calm feels like rejection to them. Your confidence feels like disrespect. Your distance feels like abandonment, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something separate. And separation is the one thing narcissistic control cannot tolerate. Another reason narcissistic parents make you feel crazy is contradiction. They say they love you while consistently hurting you. They say they want the best for you while undermining your confidence. They say family matters while violating your boundaries. Your brain tries to hold two opposing realities at once, and that creates cognitive dissonance. You start asking yourself questions that never get answered. If they love me, why does this hurt so much? If I'm the problem, why do I feel so empty? If this is normal, why does my body feel unsafe? That confusion isn't weakness. It's the result of emotional manipulation layered over years. Narcissistic parents thrive on confusion because clarity creates independence. That's why conversations with them feel circular. You raise a concern. They deflect. They bring up something unrelated from the past. They twist your words. Suddenly you're defending yourself instead of being heard. You walk away mentally exhausted, wondering how the conversation even went there. Over time, your nervous system adapts by shutting down. You stop sharing. You stop expecting understanding. You stop expressing needs. This emotional shutdown often looks like strength from the outside, but inside it's exhaustion. You're not healed. You're protected. The shift toward clarity usually begins quietly. You hear someone describe narcissistic abuse and feel seen instead of judged. You realize your reactions aren't random, they're patterned. You recognize your childhood in words you never had before. That awareness feels uncomfortable, but it's grounding. When the fog lifts, you don't suddenly feel confident. You feel disoriented. You start noticing how often you minimize yourself, how quickly you doubt your memory, how deeply you were trained to prioritize others over yourself. But now there's something new: understanding. You weren't crazy. You were responding to crazy-making behavior. You weren't weak. You were adapting to emotional unpredictability. You weren't broken. You were surviving. Once you see that, your behavior changes naturally. You stop chasing validation from people who benefit from your self-doubt. You stop explaining boundaries to people who refuse to respect them. You stop arguing with people who twist reality. You begin choosing clarity over chaos, and the most powerful shift of all happens quietly. You stop needing your narcissistic parent to admit what they did, because you finally admit what happened. That's when their control ends. If this video feels uncomfortably accurate, that's not coincidence. It means you're waking up. If you want more clarity like this, not noise, not hype, but understanding that actually helps you trust yourself again, subscribe. You've questioned yourself long enough. Now it's time to stand on your own reality.